Hello and welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, the channel for film reviews, discussions and everything in between. I'm Chris Garner, joined by my co-host George Aldridge, and in today's show we're going to be bringing you our review of the so far critically panned and much derided Fantastic Four reboot. I'm still not quite sure whether it's Fantastic Four or Fan Four Stick, I don't know what they went with in the end, but either one. So this is definitely one to watch today. We're going to bring you our spoiler-free review and going into our spoilers later on. And I know we've both got a lot to say on that movie, and it'll be interesting to see what everyone else thinks. But later on in the show, we'll have our usual segments of recommended movie and film fights. But first, as always, we kick off our show with a look back and breakdown on the week in movie news. So, George, what have we got first?
Bill Murray it's been confirmed that Bill Murray will have a cameo in the new Ghostbusters remake thing.
Yeah, well, I heard about this before we hit record. I didn't know about this news at all, but so we know that at least one scene of this movie is going to be tolerable, at least. But it was weird because they said they weren't going to connect it in any way to the original Ghostbusters. They said this was going to be its own thing. It was going to be very much a reboot and only similar in idea and concept. But if they're bringing Bill Murray into it, then either it's going to be a sort of they bump into him on the street and it's like a fun little nod, or if he's still the same character he was from the original movies, that automatically ties this into the original stuff.
I think it will kind of be they see him in the street and it's really just a little random moment, if you know what I mean. I don't think it's going to be a main thing. I doubt he'd probably want to reprise his character anyway. It's just going to be one of them.
And I think he's gone on record before to say he wanted no involvement in anything Ghostbusters ever again. So you're probably right. He might get one or two lines in it, perhaps, but I mean, it's cool that he's going to be a part of it, but again, it still doesn't change my opinion on the film at all, or the idea of rebooting the franchise or anything like that. I'll need to see more from it, like a trailer or something. This comes out next year, am I right? The new Ghostbusters?
Yeah, I don't know the release date. I just know it's sometime next year.
So we'll probably get a trailer at the start of summer or just before, somewhere like March or something, when the big films come out, like Batman v Superman. We'll get our first look at it. But yeah, it's neat that he's coming back, but I'm not too enthusiastic with the whole thing still.
No, I don't think it's going to be much. If anything, I mean, didn't he have a cameo in Dumb and Dumber 2? So, it might just be a load of shite or something. I don't know. It depends how much you got paid for it.
Yeah, that's true. And then in our next bit of news, more reboot news. Mortal Kombat is getting a reboot with James Wan producing. Not directing, though, so that's a bit of a strange one, but I guess his schedule's kind of filled with, what was it? It's Robotech and Aquaman. So yeah, he's going to be busy for a long time to do this. But Mortal Kombat, obviously the successful video game fighting franchise. It's already had two movies, which I know some people sort of begrudgingly like. It's sort of a guilty pleasure movie. I've never seen those, and I'm not too clued up on the Mortal Kombat franchise. I know it has sort of like a rough story to it, like the fighting tournament and some of the characters like that, but obviously the focus is very much just on the fighting. If they are going to reboot this thing, though, I think you've sort of got to go all in with the violence and stuff like the video game has. It's got to be an 18, it's got to be very stylized, and obviously you've got to have the fantastic fight choreography and stuff like that, but you're going to have to make some kind of character and story out of it, and I don't know how easy that's going to be to do.
Yeah, I think with Mortal Kombat, the first thing, when it said one was produced, I was like, okay, I can get behind that. Obviously, he's busy. Then straight away, I wanted Gareth Evans to do it, who's done the two Raid films. Because he's the only person that could probably have lots of fighting, and it makes sense and not be too over the top, but also be brutal as hell, like the films.
Yeah, and that'd be it wouldn't be too much different to films he's made before, obviously with the Raid 1, Raid 2. I know he wants to get round to making the Raid 3, but I think that's going to be a few years off yet. There's probably, undoubtedly there was loads of preparation went into that, and months and months of getting all the choreography down. So I think this would be a sort of nice sort of escape from the Raid franchise before he goes back to it, and I think he could definitely do it, so that's a great shout for that. I don't know whether they'd give him the opportunity to direct it, because although the Raid are fantastic films, both of them, I don't know how successful and popular they are over here. But it might be one of the cases we've seen it happen with Godzilla, and we've saw it happen with Fantastic Four, where they take a smaller director and give him this big thing that could turn into a franchise with like spin-offs and all that kind of stuff. But James Wan producing, is fantastic talent. It's a shame he's not directing because that would have, if he'd have pulled that off, then it would have just shown how versatile of a director he is. He was very much sort of a horror director, but now with these two movies and with Furious 7 that came out, he's proven himself to be a great action director. So it would have been cool to see him do sort of like hand-to-hand combat style. But no, I mean, it's great that it's getting a reboot. I think it's ready for a reboot, and I think if done well, it could be great. And with our next bit of news as well, with the Uncharted film based on the video game, it might be sort of resurgence in actually good video game based films.
Yeah, I mean, with Uncharted, they're by far some of the best games I've played the past 10 years. Also, is basically Indiana Jones, so there's a lot that could go wrong with it, but if they get the right cast and crew and director in it, it's going to be, it should be really, really good. But that's going to come down to the opinion if they try and milk it. Do you know what I mean? It's one of them. But I'm excited for it. It makes sense to delay it because it was originally 2016, but there's no cast in place at the minute. I think they've got a script together, but it's one there where they keep delaying it. But I think 2017 would be the year, especially with the final game coming out next year.
Yeah, and it's got some big competition next year as well. But I know that the Uncharted series is very much successful, and I've played all three of them. The fourth one's coming out. I'm not too keen on the games. Like, I don't really like the characters in it. What the big draw for the games are the set pieces and the action set pieces like that. So I think I can see that happening on film and being just visually amazing. And you're right, they are very much like Indiana Jones. So if done right, this may, sort of wash away the taste a little bit of Indiana Jones: Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Um, but as you said, it depends on who they get to play Nathan Drake and all the other characters and stuff like that. What director they get. I saw loads of people saying that they wanted Michael Bay because it's sort of that'd be right up his alley in terms of films that he makes. I guess I could see it in terms of the action, but you really want someone who's like really passionate about it and who's can sort of be like how Spielberg was with Indiana Jones and just sort of get that sense of adventure back. Like I want an Indiana Jones. I don't want like another National Treasure. Like that. There's a big quality difference between the two.
Yeah, I think it probably would be more or less an Indiana Jones type film. I think they'll nail the casting because that's the main draw to it. And I think Sony's producing, but I mean they've showed with the Last of Us casting room and stuff like that except for their Spider-Man shite, it's not all bad there.
Yeah, and more to the point of it being delayed, I'd rather have it delayed than rushed out, slapped together. But at this stage now, there's no chance they could get it done for like 2016 probably,
No.
with nothing in place. And I think they've gone through a couple of directors already who dropped out of the project. So until they can get someone zoned down, and they'll get it done next year regardless. So I think 2017 is a good date for it. Yeah. And then we move on to our next bit of news, which I'm really not too keen on, but Jumanji, the Robin Williams film from the 90s, is getting a remake or reboot. I'm not sure if they were clear on what it was, but anyway, it's coming back, and I believe that's coming out next December. I think I saw it, or it's later next year sometime. I've said my thoughts on reboots and remakes, all stuff like that before. I don't think this needs to be made. I think it's kind of a slap in the face to like Robin Williams and his talent from that movie. There's no one you can get who's going to top his performance from that. And I just think Jumanji is again sort of a product of its time. I'm not sure what else you can really do with it. The first one's very sort of tense in parts. It can get scary, but it's still very much a family adventure movie. It's a really good one, and I just don't think it should. I think it should just be left alone, and just sort of preserved as what it was.
Yeah, I mean it's the kind of joke they're doing this. I mean they did like a sort of crappy thing a few years ago called Zathura or something. That was basically sci-fi Jumanji. Then we said, didn't we, that the Goosebumps looks a lot like Jumanji. The fact that they're just going to finish an hour, it's one of them where it's really pointless to do unless they kind of continue it on and have. Was it the book or the game? I can't really remember. I haven't seen it in years, but
Yeah, it was the game. Yeah.
they could do a lot with it, but I just don't think they needed to. And they shouldn't have used the words reboot or remake. They could have just explored a new path to do it, or I don't know. But So on them, they shouldn't risk it, and it's a bit of a slap in the face to Robin Williams.
I think the idea is good for sort of reboot or like continuation. As you say, I'd rather see a continuation of it. But it's going to be all down to the cast, and I just don't think you can top the cast that the original had. But we'll see once we get more details and see what kind of director we get on board with it. I could see a Chris Columbus directing this, but we've seen his recent track record with Pixel, so I'm not sure if he'd be the prime director for that. But we'll move on to our next bit of news now. Colin Farrell has been cast in the new Harry Potter spin-off, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Again, I hadn't heard about this until you sent me the schedule of what we're going to be talking about. Colin Farrell's a solid actor. It's a bit strange, like I wouldn't immediately imagine him in a Harry Potter film or like spin-off film like that. But it all depends on what character he's going to be playing. I know they're going to have to take massive liberties with the book because Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is like a pamphlet. It's like a little leaflet with just a couple of creatures in it and stuff like that. So, especially because they're going to be stretching it out to 3 movies,
Yeah,
they're going to have to add a plot.
I think with this, because J.K. Rowling's writing the screenplays, I think she's got an idea. I think it's more or less like what happened for the author of the fictional book to make that into a book. You know what I mean? Because then it's like a Hogwarts textbook. So I
Yeah,
think it's going to be about how that author did all that stuff. But I just don't. I mean, they confirmed Colin Farrell will be playing a wizard, and I just can't see that happening. But
no,
it
yeah.
could work. But I really, really like, whoa, Colin Farrell. It's going to be interesting.
I really, really want him to just go. If he's playing a villain or something, and we know what a great villain Voldemort was, like in sheer like over the topedness, like he's just insane in those last couple of movies. I want Colin Farrell to like channel his inner Bullseye from the Daredevil film with Ben Affleck because in that film he just completely chewed every bit of scenery he was in, and I really want to see that again. But we don't know. He might be playing a good guy. It's not unheard of for Colin Farrell to play a good guy. We'll have to wait till more details come out and stuff. But from casting, he can be a solid actor. So, and they must know what they're doing with all the cast that they've got on board already. So they must have a plan for him. Other sequel news: Prometheus 2 is going to start filming in January. About time too. Now, I didn't like the first Prometheus film at all. I thought it was very much a letdown. I don't think it was a great tie into the Alien franchise. I thought they had a great cast on board, but all the characterizations and development stuff was like all over the place. Really, it just didn't feel like an Alien movie. But one thing I'll say was that in that movie, and I guess this is sort of down to Damon Lindelof helped writing it, who did Lost, and Lost is infamous for unanswered questions. The first one didn't tie hardly anything up, and it kind of left off for a sequel with the promise that everything would get explained in that. So I'm kind of glad that it is getting a sequel and it's going to complete that story, we hope, unless they're going to go for a trilogy. I think it's definitely needed. Am I looking forward to it? No, because I didn't like the first one, but maybe this one will sort of be a return to form and be closer to the Alien franchise. I don't think there's any word on a director yet, is there? Or is Ridley Scott confirmed that he's basically going to come back for it?
Um, it hasn't been confirmed, but apparently it's strongly hinted that because he's the one that said it shoots in January, so I'm assuming that it'll be him again. Because there's
Yeah.
been no directors attached, but it's one of them where I saw it and I didn't hate it, but that's because a week before it came out, I saw an interview where he said this isn't an Alien prequel. So I
Mm.
knew straight away that go into this with a different attitude. So it was one of them where it was kind of like the last like 30 seconds was kind of cool seeing the alien, but there was one or two bits I liked. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people say, but about the unanswered questions is quite annoying because I kind of wanted to see it properly done. But
Yeah.
it'll be interesting because in all honesty, the film looked great. I mean, it had that sci-fi, that kind of old Ridley Scott vision, but it didn't pay off, and I'm hoping that the sequel does. I wouldn't be surprised if they make it a trilogy.
Yeah, and it'll be weird to see when this is released. I don't know if this is going to be released ahead of Neil Blomkamp. Is that his name? Neil Blomkamp's
Yeah,
reboot of Aliens, or continuation rather, like the sort of sequel he's going to be making. So it'll be. I don't know how they're going to release it because obviously the two are going to be so very tied together moving ahead. So it'll see. We'll have to see when it's released. But I mean, 2017 filming. I'd expect we're going to get probably a summer 2018 release date. because I think the other one came out during the summer as well. I just hope it's better than the first one because I think the first one had a cracking cast. It looked great, and that trailer that came out, like the first teaser trailer, was just brilliant. So atmospheric how they did that, and it sort of called back to the original Alien thing. I just hope that they put a little bit more focus on the story and just get it tightened up this time, and hopefully they will. More sequel news. Bad Boys 3 and 4 have been confirmed. Now, I've never seen any of the other two, so I don't know how they hold up. I've heard that Bad Boys 2 is meant to be like one of Michael Bay's best because it's just sort of a straight up comedy with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. I you know my thoughts on Michael Bay, so I'm not going to go all into that spiel again, but 3 and 4, I guess. I think these would only work though if they still got the two lead actors back. I think if it was like sort of a reboot and they got two new people, I don't think it would work. I think this entirely hinges on the fact of getting those two actors back, and I don't know whether Will Smith at this stage would. I don't know if his opinions have changed and stuff, or if he'll still just sort of go in anything. Hey, he was in After Earth, so he must still just go into any project he wants.
Yeah, it's one of them where it's kind of like, oh, I've never seen the first two. It's Michael Bay. I heard about three, didn't know anything about four.
Mm.
It's one of them where I probably won't see. Will Smith, I've never really been bothered on. Martin
Mm.
Lawrence, I've seen nothing. It's one of them where I'd rather see Michael Bay do Transformers.
Oh, see, this shocks me that you haven't seen these movies because you just sing Michael Bay's praises all the time. I thought this would be right up your alley to watch these movies, but
No, I've got some other Michael Bay films I'd rather watch.
oh, Armageddon and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like him, but I haven't seen too much of him yet.
Yeah. We'll move on to our next bit of news then. Ready Player One, which is going to be directed by Steven Spielberg, has got a release date. I think you know more about this than me, so do you know when this is getting released and stuff like that?
Yeah, it says December 15th, 2017, so 6 months after Star Wars, in case anyone's getting December releases mixed up.
Yeah.
It's one of them where the book's meant to be amazing. I bought it, I haven't read it yet because I'm just going for another one at the minute. And everyone said this is quality, it's really good, blah blah blah. Then it came out, it was out of Nolan, Edgar Wright, and Spielberg. Then suddenly it was out of Nolan and Spielberg, and it went to Spielberg. And you read it the synopsis earlier, and it sounds very much like a Spielberg type of film. So it'll be interesting how it comes out because it's really, really highly acclaimed. Whether or not they're doing December as a blockbuster or trying to tip it for Oscars, I don't know. But it's one of them where it'll be interesting to see how it comes out on the big screen. And also because he's got a lot of films he's meant to be doing, so it's another one on his busy schedule.
Yeah, and I didn't read too much into the synopsis. I'd like to wait for a trailer or to, be surprised by it. But it's something involving like a virtual world where anything's possible, and I don't know if someone wants to sort of like find out the truth behind it or break out of it. I'm not sure. But if the project was offered to Spielberg and Nolan, then they know that this movie must have some kind of clout if they're offering it to those two fantastic filmmakers. And Spielberg's got the gig, so he's going to make it fun. He's going to make it adventurous. So it'd be definitely interesting to see. I'm looking forward to it. I don't want to know too much on the premise, though. I'd rather be surprised for it. And then our last bit of news before we move into the one and only trailer that came out this week is that Ben Affleck may be directing a Batman trilogy. I'd only kind of heard brief rumours of this. I'm not sure if this is confirmed or not at this point. He is tied to do the first standalone Batman film, which I think they said was going to be 2018, called The Batman. But if we're getting a trilogy, then I'm absolutely sold. I probably should wait until the first standalone Batman movie comes out, or we see Batman more in Batman v Superman and the Justice League film, stuff like that. But I watched The Town recently, and we'll be recording our review for The Town for Film Club later today. In short, I thought that movie was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was phenomenally directed, and it really shows what a talent Ben Affleck is. I still need to see Argo and the rest of his movies, stuff like that, but just from watching The Town, I can imagine what his vision of a Batman film would be like. I think it's a very natural progression from Nolan's style, and in The Town and stuff like it's based in a place in Boston, I think, where crime's high. It feels grimy, it feels gritty, it feels like there's no hope on the streets because of all these gangs, and I can see him taking that style and putting it straight into a Gotham City. We'll have to wait to see what his performance is like, but from the trailer to Batman v Superman, I think he's going to be probably our best Batman we've ever had on screen, and the prospect of him directing a new Batman trilogy, I think, is fantastic, and it'll be interesting to see how it ties into the broader DCU as well.
Yeah, and I think the story of this comes from they've showed a rough cut to Bourge, they gave it standing ovation, blah blah blah. They've gone out, they've postponed his two directing films he was meant to be doing. Said, listen up, you've got the keys here. You can have a Batman trilogy. The whole of the DC universe is going to be straight around your Batman. They're saying he's going to be the definitive Batman. So clearly they're giving him all the powers they want, which is fair enough because in all honesty, Batman is the main guy. And it'll be interesting what he does with it because you're right, the town was fantastic, and I only saw it till the other day. Whereas with Argo, whenever I seen Argo, there's this one scene that's one of the most tense things I've ever seen. And after watching Town, you're kind of like, okay, he's good at this and he's suited to direct this film. And I want to see what he does with it because obviously now he's going to have almost an unlimited budget. Whether or not he does my dream project and does Arkham Asylum across two films, or he's probably going to do a standard him v Joker after Suicide Squad, him Red Hood, and him and something else. But it's going to be one of them where I think he's got the keys to a kingdom and he's not going to cock it up because he's a massive
Yeah,
Batman fan as well.
yeah, and I think just going on a brief tangent before we move on to our trailer review, my favourite incarnation of Batman is the Kevin Conroy Batman from the animated series and from the Arkham games, and I think what I'd like to see visually and on screen is sort of the Arkham games put on the big screen. I think that's the best depiction of Batman we've seen, characterization, look, all that kind of stuff. And from the brief glimpse we've got of Batman from Batman v Superman, the bit where he's in the Batwing and the Batmobile, stuff like that, it looks like it's going to be close to that, and the look of Gotham and everything like that as well, like always dark, constantly raining, just everything like that, the little details like that. It looks like a heightened comic book Batman world, and that's really what I want to see. We've seen it already. He's actually using the grappling gun for once, and it looks like straight out of the Arkham games. So I think it's definitely in good hands. We'll have to see what he looks like in Batman v Superman. Obviously, I think it'll probably turn out he's the strongest thing in that movie, and audiences love Batman. So I'm sure if, like they said, Ben Affleck's making a Batman trilogy, everyone's going to be happy. And I want to see him prove everyone wrong because we know how everyone, when he was first announced as playing Batman, everyone just sort of raged against it and stuff. So I want to see him prove them wrong and give us another solid Batman trilogy.
Yeah, and hopefully too. I think most people were proved wrong on the opening of that new trailer that came out, but he's gonna absolutely own that role, and it's gonna be nice to see a different take as well because he's gonna be nothing like Bells. He's gonna be nothing like Keaton. He's gonna be his own person, and I think that's gonna work into his favour too. That he's got no pressure on that aspect of it. Say they did a grounded Batman film, there's going to be too much comparison. It'll be harder to do. But the fact that this is a broad world, he's kind of can do whatever he wants, galactical, that sort of stuff. It's going to be a whole new Batman that no one's seen before on the big screen.
And that's what you want. Like, no one wants to see exactly the same incarnation. Like, I always want to see a new depiction of Batman, see what they do with it, unless it's a Joel Schumacher Batman, in which case, just skip ahead to Christian Bale's one. But we'll move on to our last bit of news now, which is our trailer breakdown of something else in the superhero universe. We got three trailers really of the recent Deadpool movie that's coming out. It's the 20th Century Fox made movie based on the Marvel character. We'll start off with the first trailer that came out, which was sort of a short 30-second teaser or a minute-long teaser to the trailer that was going to be released the day after. To be honest, out of all the trailers, this was my favourite. I thought this was absolutely genius. It sort of starts off in a darkly lit room. You just see the silhouette of Deadpool sitting in a big red leather armchair in front of a fireplace, and he's got sort of this dark, deep, epic voiceover, and he says something like, "From the studio that inexplicably sewed his fucking mouth shut the first time around." And right from that line, I was like, this is in safe hands. It's being self-referential. It's calling back, obviously, to the X-Men Origins Wolverine depiction of Deadpool, which wasn't really a Deadpool depiction. And then just seeing him in the armchair with a pipe. Like, he's not even smoking it, he's just using it as a prop. I thought that was fantastic. And right there, It was like this is in safe hands. But we both knew that the trailer they were going to release the day after was going to be the one that was released at Comic Con, and it was. But it was better to see it in proper quality this time.
Yeah, and I think the teaser going into it, I despise these trailer for trailers, but this one was kind of cool because it wasn't a trailer; it was genuinely like a one-shot type thing, and it is going to give you literally the whole thing was like, okay, we know what we're going to get at the trailer. Then the trailer came out, and you're right, it was the Comic Con one. They did a green band, red band, and it looks a lot better. You can see a lot more and stuff. You can see the whole like jokes and how it plays off, and I was quite excited. I think it looks a lot better now than that leaked one did.
Mm.
But it's one of them where there's still a few risks about the film. But I think seeing some of that action, I think is going to be great. The actual character just depends on how much they do with it, and if it's too much.
Yeah, and the I think it's worth seeing all the trailers really. Like the Green Pan trailer, it's sort of like a Cliff Notes version of the Red Band one. Obviously, they cut all the language out. They changed some of the lines in it because they wouldn't be allowed to be shown on a Green Band trailer. But at the very end of it, Deadpool sort of speaks to the camera and says like, "Oh, you can watch my Red Band trailer, which has all this extra language and stuff like that." And he gets a few sort of witty quips in at the end of that. So it's worth watching it just for that alone. The Red Band trailer, my thoughts still haven't really changed for it when we did our Comic Con breakdown. Not a lot of the humour in it hits with me. Maybe it's just not my kind of humour. There's a few jokes and a few lines that Deadpool says, like the bit where he shoots the guys and sort of inhales the smoke coming from the guns. I thought that was brilliant, and the costume looks fantastic. Ryan Reynolds looks solid, but it's like that teaser trailer that came out. I like Deadpool when he's in small doses. Like I've said this before, he's like a shot of adrenaline. Like he's that instant kick, like a short time, like a minute to 2 minutes, fine. But I don't know how well a full film's gonna work. That being said, I think it looks like it's in safe hands. It looks like they're taking the character not a lot more seriously because Deadpool character isn't serious, but it looks like they're doing the comic book counterpart justice this time around. The costume looks great. I'm sure that Ryan Reynolds will have just loads of fun playing it, and it already looks like he is doing. Um, I just want to see how it's going to sort of all culminate into a finished film. I just hope we get a little bit more sort of well written humour. A lot of the jokes in this trailer didn't really hit with me. It was just sort of juvenile humour that just didn't make me laugh all that much. But I'm sure maybe just in the trailer and from what they filmed at the minute, they're not going to put the best jokes in the trailer because otherwise it'll spoil the whole thing. But it was interesting to see Colossus in there as well, so they're tying it directly into the X-Men franchise.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that with Colossus, he's got like a new look where he doesn't look like a T1000. He actually looks
Mm.
like a normal sort of metal thing. And it's going to be interesting. So obviously after Days of Future Past, it's all reset. I still don't know what year this is meant to be set in
Mm.
because some of the songs are very 90s-ish. It's got that feel, but then again, it looks so modern. It's going to be interesting to see what they do and how they fit it in. But then again, Fox is horrific with continuity errors.
Oh yeah, and already like they've got a different actor, haven't they, or something for Colossus?
Yeah,
Like it's not going to be the same guy who was in X-Men. I think what it boiled down to was the in Deadpool. I think he's just going to be completely CGI, so we're probably only going to see him in the metal form. And they did ask the actor who played him in the X-Men films if he wanted to come back for it, but he was like, "Look, I'm not going to be on camera. I'm not really going to be able to say much, so I'll pass." So I mean, that was down to him. You're going to have to recast, but I think that Colossus is a character that, yes, he's cropped up in the X-Men films, but like general moviegoer who's sort of like a casual viewer does and isn't looking for it isn't going to notice that it's a different actor because he hasn't really been in X-Men all that much besides X-Men 2, 3, and Days of Future Past, really.
yeah, it's one of them. I don't think people really care about him in all honesty, but it would just be interesting to see how Deadpool fares against another character and whether or not he kills him or does something big thing. But I don't know. It looks better than it originally did, but I'm still very skeptical but excited.
Yeah, same here. But so we're kind of singing Fox's praise there a little bit with Deadpool, but now on the flip side, we're going to get into our main review today, which is going to be Josh Trank's recent reboot of Fantastic Four, or Fant Four Stick. I'm still going to call it Fant Four Stick because that's what was all on the movie posters when I went to check out this movie at the weekend. We're going to start off with a spoiler-free section, and then we'll move into spoilers later. Although, really, this is a movie where it's so predictable, even from the trailers, that there's really not a whole lot to spoil. But just in case you are completely new to the Fantastic Four world and don't know much about the origins, stuff like that. We will have a spoiler section, but we'll warn you before we get into that.
Dr. Storm, we gave you 6 years and millions of dollars, and you gave us nothing. What's different now?
Reed Richards. He knows answers to questions we don't even know to ask yet. This is our chance to learn more about our planet and maybe even save it. I want you to meet my daughter, Sue.
You want to be famous?
I just want my work to make a difference. John, Reed.
This guy doesn't take orders well.
Yeah, especially from people who say, I don't take orders well. Don't let any of these lab coats give you any crap, all right? Well, if I do, I know who to call. The muscle.
I gotta say, it's fun having you here.
Really?
No.
What you've created here is incredible.
Incredible.
Four have survived. All exhibit unique physical conditions.
I just want to fix my friends.
You can't fix this.
You should use these powers to help people.
You opened a door you don't know how to close. You don't know anything about what's coming.
What is coming?
Doom.
So we'll kick off really with. I want to start with sort of like the behind the scenes stuff because this movie, for me, I can't think of another movie that's been this sort of controversial with its behind the scenes and like the director speaking out about it, how he hates the film and it's not what he wanted to make, actors not caring, reshoots, everything like that. I can honestly say I don't think I can think of another movie that I've seen in my lifetime where it's had this much of a troubled production, especially one of a superhero film, and especially considering it's a modern superhero film. Now superhero films have sort of had this resurgence, so I think we should talk about this first, and probably this section will take more time than actually talking about the film, because the film, there's really not a whole lot to say about it. But we'll start off with that tweet that was released a few days ago. Josh Trank posted a tweet basically saying, you know, a year ago I had a fantastic version of this film. It's a version of the film I would have loved everyone to see. But he sort of hints that Fox, the studio Fox, sort of tampered with it and meddled with it and changed it from his idea, and now it's a crap film, basically. I'm obviously paraphrasing, but it was something along those lines. And you just don't see that with directors now. Like, even if they make a bad film, they tend to kind of stand by it and like bullshit in interviews and say that it was their vision and all stuff like that. But I have never seen a director be this aggressive to his own movie before.
No, and I think, in all honesty, we'll go into it far more later, but this film, not only is it his second film, he's gone from a low-budget indie to a studio watching over him every single day. One of them types. Obviously, there's pressure and shit. But it's so obvious that so much of this film was tampered with by Fox. Clearly, he's upset at the outcome, maybe of his bits, but clearly Fox is intervening. It's also got him kicked off Star Wars, which would probably send most people to commit suicide that like Star Wars. This film is probably going to end his big budget career unless someone's going to risk taking a shot. And that tweet was kind of the pinnacle of it, because everyone knew it was tampered with and they were just waiting for him to confirm it. You wouldn't think he would. Just like, you know, you get all these films, you know, when the studios interfere, but this was, you know, I had a film that would be getting good reviews. It might have got good reviews, it might not have, but in a way, I want to say fair play to him, because you've had a few times the past few months where directors are starting to now slag off the board, which is understandable, because look at Terminator, they kicked off because they spoiled it in the trailer. Look at Joss Whedon in the Avengers, he was pissed off that they were cutting some of the scenes and blah blah blah. Look at
Mark Webb as well with is it Mark Webb?
Yep.
Spider-Man, yeah.
Yep, he had no bottle, he could have said something, he didn't. And it seems to be a lot of the bigger films where I understand that studios got to do it, but it seems to me like it's these studios that want too much control over it. And the other thing I want to say is with Fox, the whole film's a sham in itself. That the only reason this was put into production so they don't lose the rights on a free to Disney, and they'll do anything not to lose the rights to Disney. I mean, this film is like shite, and you know that it probably will get a sequel. I wouldn't be surprised if they want to keep the rights, but also I know that for a fact that if they don't give it a sequel, they'll at least put it in X-Men, and you just know that we knew it was going to be a train wreck. But I want to congratulate Josh Trank on speaking up, because hopefully it's going to start to get other directors too, because there's no freedom. I mean, imagine if the studios got involved with like Interstellar, told Nolan that he couldn't do that final third, he'd have probably just quit on the spot. No one would dare do it to people like Spielberg. And okay, people like Nolan and Spielberg, they've all got their films, they've got them the creative freedom, but you know, Josh Trank's a young director. He's done one film that was very, very good at that, and this was just, it just seemed like an absolute mess. And it's not the first time they've screwed him. I mean, originally he was doing the Chronicle sequel until they told him that there's got to be another 4 people getting their powers, so clearly he's had a bad rep, but I don't think he's innocent of all blame.
No, and a lot of people are sort of saying that Chronicle may be just like his one-hit wonder, like it was just a sort of it's almost like The Sixth Sense with M. Night Shyamalan, like it was just that one movie that turned out good, then all the rest are crap. So I don't know how much credit goes to Max Landis for writing Chronicle and how much of that sort of like came through in his direction. I'll be honest, like I didn't care for Chronicle at all. I thought it was sort of an okay, low-budget found footage superhero movie, but it's not one I'm ever going to go back to. I watched it the once and that was enough for me. But I'll agree with you there. Like, fair play to him for like coming out and speaking about this, because granted, like he had to delete the tweet. Like, obviously, 20th Century Fox probably like got in contact with him and said, "Look, what are you doing? Like, this film's still out. We're trying to advertise it, all stuff like that, and you're posting stuff like this." But again, I've never seen a movie in my whole life that I can think of right now where it's been so completely, utterly dead on arrival. Like, there was no enthusiasm from anyone from the cast. Like, I think 2014, they didn't even appear at Comic-Con at all. And I'll mention this briefly. I'm not sure if this is actually from Trank, so I'll kind of gloss over it. But there was a post knocking around the other day. I think it was on Reddit or something like that. I think they'd taken it from Trank and sort of like posted it around a lot. He basically outlined everything that was different about the film from his original vision. He says that 3 action scenes were cut out of it. 2 months before the film was released, the cast came back in for reshoots to film the ending, and you can sort of see that with continuity errors, but we'll get into that later. And they basically just completely bastardise his film. So I can understand that being really irritating for a director, but here's the thing. From his original idea and what the kind of direction he wanted to go in with and the concept he was going in with, it may have been an okay movie on its own, but as a Fantastic Four film, it would have still been just as bad as this one was. Like, I think he's gone on record and said that he wanted to make it very much like a sort of David Cronenberg movie, like The Fly, very much body horror, and there are still elements of that in there, which I want to get into later. And it was going to be a story of just 4 people mutating and gaining these like horrific powers from space and having to deal with it. And I think it would have been a much more personal story, but just tonally, I'll compare this sort of with Man of Steel. It's very bleak. It's very grim. There's not much humour in it at all. And that's not what you think of. When you think of Fantastic Four, you think of sort of bright, energetic, fun. It's the first superhero family, and you just don't get that sense from it. It's all very sort of bleak and just... It's unpleasant. It's almost unpleasant to watch in parts of this film. And because of that, I don't really know the audience it was geared for. Like, I can't see kids or like fans of the colourful comic book characters going to see this movie and getting any enjoyment out of it. There's not really any major action scenes in the film of the Fantastic Four doing what they do best, or any sort of witty banter between all of them. There's none of that, and then for adults, they're just going to be bored because there's nothing there for character or depth or anything to get invested in. So it's just a completely just tonal mess of a film, and we've seen that reflected on how much it's made. I think it was something around 24.6 million opening weekend, which is obviously an absolutely crushing loss for a superhero film, and I think Fox knew it was going to do bad, but I think they were definitely expecting more than that. And I think it's the second lowest opening weekend for a superhero film, behind Ghost Rider 2: Spirit of Vengeance, and you can kind of see it. It was dead on arrival, negative reviews. I think it's currently sitting at a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes, it's lower than Pixels, it's lower than Vacation, it's lower than tons of stuff. And I think we're more critical of superhero films now. They've had this resurgence since like Marvel's Iron Man and what they've created. But it's weird because even Fox, with their X-Men franchise, with First Class, even with the sort of new Wolverine movie that came out, and obviously Days of Future Past is one of my favourite comic book movies of all time, it seemed like they were giving more freedom to their directors with Bryan Singer, like, make the X-Men movie you want, we're not going to get involved all that much. Of course they probably did step in every now and then, all studios do. Marvel are kind of doing it a bit more now, saying, these are your plot points, hit these, but we also want you to throw in a reference to this character for movies we'll make in the future. And you go, okay, that's fair enough. But this seemed like maybe they were scared because it was a reboot of a franchise that didn't do well in the first place. But as you said, it was a movie made out of necessity to keep the rights. There was no creative spark behind it. There was no enthusiasm. There was no vision from anyone that this was a film they wanted to make. It was a movie made purely for greed and to retain the rights, and it's backfired on them. And I don't know whether this will get a sequel. Judging from the sort of reception it's got from this one and how much it's made, and audiences don't care, I don't see them putting the money behind a sequel to get it made.
No, but I don't think anyone wants to watch it. I mean, look at the kids. I mean, I'll say now that when I was younger, when Fantastic Four came out, the two old ones, I think I was 8, 9 years old. I really enjoyed the first one. Second one I weren't too keen on. That's when I hit that age when I was getting into stuff. But that first one was great fun. It was bright, it was cool, they were a team, they were fun, and that sort of stuff. This was just miserable and depressing. I mean, the first 40 minutes I'll say is bearable as a science fiction film, not a superhero film. Then it goes completely downhill off limits, beyond painful, and it's a mess. And then we can look at more of some of the sort of production stuff where I think Max Landis, who wrote Chronicle, said, Chronicle was the first film I got greenlit as a writer. I'd sold lots of stuff before. Then he went into saying Josh Trank, he had enthusiasm, he was loving it. He says me and him would be on set every day. It was a low budget indie. Fox just let us do it. They didn't expect it to be a hit, but they were happy, etc. So on. He says, and the issue is that now Josh Trank got that hit, they expect him to do better. Except they had 3 or 4 people hired watching him every single day, telling what he can and can't do, and as well as messing with his mind. I mean, you get the reports that he trashed a house worth I think 300, 400 grand. Everyone's like, how the hell could he do that with his dogs? Then it's now coming out in the past week that they reckon he was intentionally damaging the house because of how Fox was being around him in the film. So it kind of seems that he's genuinely turned into a psychopath off that. But then you can add some of the stuff where there's rumours that apparently he was I don't think he hit anyone, but he was treating the actual cast like shit, and they were apparently despised working on it. You're getting loads of stuff where he can pull the innocent card out, fair play for that, but he's clearly been in enough shit. I don't think Disney would take you off Star Wars just because you made a bad film. I think that clearly there is something wrong behind the scenes. He has done a lot of things wrong. He chucked his toys out of the pram. He should have known he wouldn't get a lot of creative freedom. Cheers for speaking up about it, but your film must have been shit. I mean, look at all them sort of spoiler stuff that was coming out that, for a start, Victor Von Doom was... They have 2 names from him in the film. He's Victor Domashev, which everyone was like, what the fuck, why are they calling him that? But then on the paper in the film, when they're going over recruiting him, it's Victor Von Doom. So it's one of them where it's a mess. Then you can look at the early reports that Von Doom was going to be a serial hacker that was causing stuff. Everyone went apeshit, like, what the fuck? You actually watch the film, it shows him in a computer room at the start with 5 things. You see, okay, he clearly was a hacker. Next thing you know, he's scrubbed off and he's got a beard. No, he loses the beard, cuts his hair, and he's alright actually. After his opening scene, up until he comes back as Doctor Doom, he's alright. I'll go into it a lot more, but you can see some of the stuff they tampered with made sense. But it's just, it was all over the place.
Yeah, you're right with that. bringing up the stuff about the hacker, I was going to bring that up. You could definitely see like the seeds or like the effects of everything that were originally going to be there that they've tried to cover up. And like with allegations as well that Josh Trank was turning up blind drunk and stuff. I mean, if you put yourself in his shoes, then it must suck turning up each day to a project that's so changed from what you initially set out to do, and it's just not panning out how you want. That must get very irritating as a filmmaker and stuff like that. But even so, and we talked about this with Joss Whedon with Avengers 2. That's not the movie he wanted to make. He had to cut that down loads, but he still went in every day, made it to the best of his ability, and made a somewhat decent movie. I didn't like Avengers 2, but it wasn't a bad film. But this film is broken. This film is like just kicked while it's down, completely broken, and just needs putting out of its misery. It feels like, and this is the best way I can describe it before we go into it a bit more. It feels like a rough work print of a film. It feels like a first draft that the studio throws together just to see how it's going. Like still a year away from production or like months away, but they've just like turned it in as like a finished movie, and it doesn't feel finished. There's, especially like the second and third act, there's glaring sort of like holes where they've directly lifted stuff out. There's stuff in the trailers that don't even make it into the film. Like in the trailer you'll see the Thing like airdropped from a plane, and he's like fighting with some military stuff like that. That's not in the movie. And on this sort of Reddit page that came out, he was basically saying that was almost finished, but when they realised, I think they like pulled it because it was costing too much. The CGI was almost done on it, but never finished. So as a result, they had to like lift the entire scene out. And he says that there were 2 other action scenes in the film that didn't make it there. But I want to say, like, I went into this film with like an open mind. Like I'd seen all the reviewers speaking out, giving it massively negative reviews, all stuff like that. The 9% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I thought, okay, it's probably going to be bad. But when the 20th Century Fox logo came up and the Marvel Comics logo came up, I thought, maybe because my expectations were so low, I thought maybe something good will come of it. And you're right, like the first act, whilst not good, you could see the elements there of what was originally going to be set out to be made. And if the film had carried on like that, I think I would have walked out of it saying it wasn't a good film, but it was, okay as a standalone film. It would have been a terrible Fantastic Four movie. But from the trailers and stuff, and when we got to like trailer 3 and we got a bit more of a glimpse of it, I thought, okay, I'm still not completely on board with it, but it looks quite good. It looks okay. It looks perfectly serviceable. But then you see it as a whole thing, and there's just so much cut out of it, so much change. The reshoots and stuff just really sort of like crowbarred in there at the last minute that the film is just sort of dead on arrival.
Yeah, and when I looked at it, I was saying now it's not a spoiler. It says it comes out 1 year later. Then I knew going into this, I've been told by a few people you should walk out of the cinema 1 year later.
Yeah.
That's when it goes completely off rails. You can tell there's tampering before that, but you know full well that it's not Josh Trank's film when it hits that 1 year later. It's completely. There's a kind of I'll go into later actually, but it just completely goes off the tracks, and it was kind of the confirmation that this film is the shit. It's yeah. I don't really know what else I can say about spoiling it.
Yeah, no, we'll move into all that stuff with spoilers, but I completely know what you mean, and we'll chat more about that in a bit. So, I know we've talked about this quite a lot ad nauseum. We've gone on it for a long time, but I think that's definitely necessary, especially if people don't sort of like follow movie news and all stuff like that and weren't aware of the production problems it had. But I think that was worth discussing so people can truly know what sort of went on behind closed doors. And the thing is, we probably won't ever know 100% what went on, but from all the rumours and stuff like that, I think you can pretty much sort of connect the dots and see a pattern, especially with the finished movie we got. But we'll move into the movie itself a little bit more now. So the plot, for anyone that doesn't know, it's about a group of 4 scientists who crack interdimensional travel. They go to the planet, they get infected with sort of cosmic rays, and come back with superpowers. And pretty much from there, they're just a superhero team, and Doctor Doom is your villain, and they have to stop him. and it feels like I've spoiled the whole movie. But the thing is, that is the whole movie, and you get that from the trailer anyway. So it's very very basic film. It's so basic, in fact, I would say that the whole entire movie feels like a first act. Like it's a weird one. Like the whole origin story is pretty much the entire film. Um, we'll go into the characters a bit now. So obviously the Fantastic Four, leader of the team. You have Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, who is played by Miles Teller. Um, just as the cast overall, when the cast was initially confirmed, I looked at them and went, "This doesn't feel like the Fantastic Four to me." Like just the dynamic of them, and like Ben Grimm especially. Like you look at him and you go,
Billy Elliot.
"That doesn't." Was it Billy Elliot?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I didn't know that. Oh, that's hilarious. Exactly. Like, why would you cast him as Ben Grimm? The thing, like, he's a fine actor. He's a good actor and stuff like that, but he just doesn't suit the thing. And I got that with the entire cast, to be honest. Like, each actor on their own is perfectly serviceable, but just as the Fantastic Four, it doesn't work. And Miles Teller, I thinking back, the only film I've seen him in is Whiplash, and I thought he was absolutely just fantastic in that movie. But he just doesn't have that charm or charisma for the leader of the team. There's moments where he's okay, but every time I was looking at him, I was just like, that's not Reed Richards to me. And for all the bad things you can say about the original two Fantastic Four movies that were made, well, actually, it was the second and third one, wasn't it? Because they bought out that one that was never released. I really kind of like the cast in that movie, with the exception of Jessica Alba. I thought visually they looked like the Four. I thought, looking back, they had sort of good moments, like good banter between the two of them, especially Human Torch and The Thing. So when I look at those, I instantly say that's the Fantastic Four. Here, I never had any moments like that. So as a result, all of the cast, if I just group them all together, just maybe it's down to the fact that they weren't interested in the project and stuff like that, and you can kind of see that shown in their performance. If I had to pick the best one out of the group, I think that Susan Storm, played by Kate Mara, I thought she was genuinely really good, and it looked like god damn it, she was trying to get something out of this performance, and I thought she was light years better than Jessica Alba was in the previous two Fantastic Four movies. But it's weird now, like, we keep raging against those original two ones that came out, but now since this one's came out, you sort of have the benefit of hindsight, and you almost look back longingly at them and go, well, they're bad movies, yeah, but maybe they're not as bad as we thought. It's very rare that a reboot of a franchise turns out to be worse than the predecessor, especially with superhero movies.
Yeah, and with the old ones, I mean, they're actually kind of fun. Like, they actually have moments where they do stuff. In this, I mean, I go on, like, Reed Richards, I doubted before off the trailer when it came out, why the hell is it like a 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid? Boy genius, and you get into the film, and he's at school, he builds a fucking teleportation device at the age of... Right, this is another issue I have. He looks about 8 years old, then it cuts to 7 years later, and it's Miles Teller. I'm there like, holy shit, mate. These people are meant to be younger than me, and in real life, Miles Teller's 10 years older. I was there like, what the hell's going on?
They've aged like 20 years, and the thing is, he's bought this teleportation device which works, and he demonstrates it, and it doesn't win the science prize. Like, right there, I was like, this film's so bullshit.
It was just like ridiculous, and then he goes off to the back. That was kind of cool. I always wondered why. In all honesty, there's one or two good things, and you get Susan Storm and her adopted dad, where he's kind of, he wasn't in the original ones, but this is the Baxter Building. It's actually like a kind of good place for cool students. That worked. I always wondered why they needed 100 floors for one thing, and there were one or two things I didn't get the continuity. And with the cast, I mean, Reed Richards, I like Miles Teller in Whiplash, but he kind of suited that miserable drummer student. Whereas in this, Mr. Fantastic, he's meant to be clever. He doesn't even have that going about him. He just looks like he's reading a script. He's miserable to be there. You can tell he just looks like that in general. Then you've got Ben Grimm, who I prefer the older guy. I mean, it was risky having them as kids, but I think it could work. It was in a famous Marvel one where they had like an 18, 19-year-olds as the Fantastic Four, and I thought it could be a bit better. I didn't like Ben Grimm. He's kind of cool guy. He just disappears for an hour, and and he just comes back for the hell of it, because we all know what's going to happen. Then you've got Susan Storm, who I can understand that she is one of the stronger ones, but I mean, what's sad though with her, you talk about in the MCU the women being underwritten, this was even worse. I mean, Jesus Christ, she was trying, but she had some horrific lines, and it was a mess. But the one thing I will say, I did like Johnny Storm. I mean, Michael B. Jordan, he's very up and coming actor. Obviously, he's got Creed coming out, and he was pretty cool. He was the best thing about Chronicle by a mile off, and he was alright in this. I could understand his character. It made sense why he's there with his dad owing money and stuff, and he was his standard cocky stuff. I liked him. He suited the character Johnny Storm, but then it just didn't work, and it's a shame because Chris Evans was great as it, but now he's Captain America, and he's like manned up. I just didn't really like any of this, to be fair. The cast didn't work for me. And
yeah, the thing is, it's the chemistry. They needed the chemistry. It's the first superhero family team, and by the end of the movie, they expect you to sort of embrace that they're now all together and they're all happy like that. But it's never earned. You never get to that stage. There's not enough interaction between each core member of the group to warrant that at the end. Michael B. Jordan, I actually kind of like the stuff that we're doing with his character at the start, where he's sort of in this. He's in this race down the street. He's very sort of brash. He's arrogant. He's sort of like Anakin from the prequels. Really, he's doing his own thing. He's sort of not playing by the rules, and I love that. Like it was playing. I think it's a Drifters song, like a Motown song, as he's driving, and you sort of get the hints at what his character's going to be like, and then that's just thrown out the window. And then they start doing something with like a relationship between Miles Teller and Kate Mara, Reed Richards and Sue Storm that's sort of developing, and then that's sort of dropped, and that's really the reason this film fails, is that they bring up the moment they bring up something that could turn out interesting, like a plot point that could go somewhere, it's just like it's dropped like straight after, and nothing ever comes of it. And Ben Grimm as well, like, I don't know much about the comic history of the Fantastic Four. I will say that, like, I know the characters, I know of Doctor Doom, I know how they get the powers and stuff like that, but I never got the impression that Ben Grimm was just sort of a guy who was Reed Richards' friend, and then he's just brought along for the ride in the last hour. I always thought he was like one of the scientists who helped them out with the stuff. I might be mistaken. I thought it was like 4 scientists went up and they got these powers.
yeah,
But as such in the movie, it's literally just like, oh, we're like going to space. Do you want to come along? And he's like, yeah, okay. And then he's just there, and as well, like Sue Storm. This might be a spoiler, but you know they get the powers anyway, so balls to spoilers. She doesn't even go up into space with them. And right there, I was like, that's bullshit. She's meant to be there with them to get the powers. Like, in the movie, they, like, teleport back and she just kind of gets hit with a shockwave and that's how she gets her powers. It's all over the place. But one thing I do like, and I think that the original Fantastic Four movie did this as well, they take Doom up with them into space. It's very weird. Like, I think in the comic book, I don't know if he's a sorcerer, and I know that he didn't go up with them in the comic book. He's just sort of a bad guy who wants to conquer the Earth, not destroy it. But for some reason in all these movies they tend to give him powers as well, probably so he's sort of equally matched with them. I don't particularly mind that, but it's just... I don't even know, it's just such a vacuous movie. It's like devoid of any character or anything. It's really difficult to even know what to talk about with it. It's just all over the place. There are some sort of good things in this movie, but then when you look at the film overall and see if like they pay off, they never do. So, can you even count those as good things? It's like really weird.
I don't know. It's just a mess. I mean, with Doom, I was saying earlier, he has the stupidest bit at the start. He kind of comes in all right, and it just goes off the rail. I kind of liked what they did. We'll go into it later of how Doom got his power, and he has one cool scene, and then a few horrific ones at that. But Tony Cabell was trying, but imagine doing this on the back of bloody Dawn of the Apes. I mean, he's going to be like, come on, I hope Cobra's alive now. Because it was just it was a waste of him, and I want to see him doing more things, but not this. I was really looking forward to Doom. Doom's a really cool villain, but the design of him was a fucking piss take.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally like they got the silver server, but they made it so he couldn't move his mouth, and they just put green lightning all over him, and boom, that's the look. He doesn't even have the cape thing. He randomly has it in another planet, in another dimension.
Yeah, where did he get that from, by the way? Like, they just go there and he's got instantly, like, the hooded cloak and cape thing. He never went up there with it. How the hell did he get it? It's just, you're right, it's just, oh, it's so bad. And I remember when the first set picture came out of it, and it was him in full costume against like a green screen on wires or something, and we all looked at it and went like, oh god, like I hope that's not how it looks in the finished movie. Maybe this is a prototype, maybe through like the wizardry of filmmaking, and when it's on screen we'll buy it more. It just looks as bad, if not worse, as it did in that first set picture. It looks worse than the original design for him. Like the original one, I think he just wears a metal mask, doesn't he? He's just like a guy in like a green hooded cloak with a metal mask on, and that's all he needs to be. It's like, I don't even know whether it looked absolutely horrific. It looks like, and it always bothers me when comic book movies do this. Like, they have an image of what the character looks like, and sure, you can change it around a little bit to make it less goofy. Like we saw this in Avengers with like Scarlet Witch. The costume for that in the comic books is very theatrical. It's very over the top. They sort of dialed it back. They just gave her like a red jacket, stuff like that. Stuff like that's fine. But when you make him look like this, and the look of Doom, he's one of the coolest looking bad guys probably in comic history. He's a fantastic looking, imposing bad guy, and they just make him look like a joke. You're right with Tony Cabot. I think even in an interview, like it's hilarious when you watch it back. Like the actors just try to like squirm their way through these interviews and just like bullshit anything they can about it. He compared Doctor Doom to Cobra in one interview I saw. And just no, like we talked about in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and stuff, like how awesome Cobra was in that movie, and his sort of like regression from being the right hand man to Caesar turning into a villain, and you buy that. In this, he literally, it's sort of spoilers, I guess, but it's just like the last 10 minutes of the movie, it just shows him and goes like, right, I want to destroy the Earth, and it's like whoa, where did this come from? Like, there's no development with him. Like, he's just sort of, he's a bad apple from the start. There's never any moments where he's sort of, you wanted almost that Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy relationship in the X-Men movies. Like, they start off as friends, and then it ends where they're bad guys. I wanted something like that, but like right from the start, he's got a grudge against Reed Richards because, oh, he's talking to Sue Storm, and Victor Von Doom had like a past like crush on her or something. So he's jealous of Reed Richards because, you know, he's hanging out with Sue. He already talks about at the start, like, humanity should be destroyed. And it's just so cliched, and it's just like, we live in a world now with superhero films where we've sort of moved past that. And they're sort of like being more daring. They're trying new stuff. They're being smarter. And there's just none of that in this movie. And it's a real shame because now it means that, like, we'll talk about this at the end. Like, I want to bring up like what's going to happen with the future of Fantastic Four at the end, but now it probably means we're not going to get another Fantastic Four movie for at least like 10 years. And I think it is a project that has potential, but it's Fox need to let go of the rights because they're not doing it right.
Yeah, and is this going to be the last one before we go into spoilers?
Yeah, we'll basic opinions now, and then we'll move into a couple of spoilers. Yeah.
Don't watch this film.
Yeah, pretty much. I couldn't sum it up more perfectly than that. Don't give money to this film. It's not a finished movie. I've saw like people on my Facebook saying like go to see the new Fantastic Four. I'm like, oh god, no, don't. I was overhearing people after the film had finished and the credits were up. Like, people were sitting behind me. I was listening to what they were saying, and it sounds like they had exactly the same opinions as us. They say, well, it started okay, and then it kind of drifted off around the middle. They literally said that, and that seems to be general consensus. I don't know whether a 9% is warranted. Like, I think I've seen worse comic book movies than this. It's sort of harmless. It's just short of 2 hours, but there's just no joy in it. It's joyless. It's vacuous. There's nothing there really to grab your attention. There's no humour, and just visually, like cinematography in this, it feels like it was filmed in like a container. Like it's just like laboratories and like grey muted colours. this is a project that didn't need to be. I'll use the term Nolanized because that seems to be what the term is now. It's not a film that needed to be dark and brooding. It should have been fun. It should have been pretty much like all the other Marvel movies that come out, just vibrant, colourful, fun. As such, what we got, like you can see what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it more grounded, maybe trying to make it tie in more with the X-Men franchise, stuff like that. It's backfired on them, and I can't see this movie. Like this will barely make its money back, I think, at the box office.
Uh,
But
but it might not
do
even
you think
get.
it'll make it back?
Well, it got 60 million worldwide open, and I think the budget's 150. Double it for marketing. I don't think it's going to be doing anything.
No, so I do hope we don't get a sequel to it, but that's our basic opinions on it. We've been very scathing on it, but you may as well stick around for spoilers because there's really not a lot to spoil in this movie, really. So we'll kick off with the sort of getting their powers, if you want, stuff like that. I thought this was probably the strongest scene in the movie. Um, but man, the tonal shift in this movie at this point, it gets really dark. Like the part where they go on the planet, I do kind of have a problem with this. Like they get drunk beforehand, and they say like, when people go into space, like all you think of is the astronaut who was the first person on the moon or the first person that got there. Like there's no thought or consideration for the people that made it happen and all stuff like that. So they say, well, we should go up first then. So their reason for going into space is basically like sort of like a drunk fueled expedition, but they sober up immediately as soon as they get to the planet. And then they do the stuff that bothered me in Prometheus so much. It's like stupid, curious, like scientists. Like they don't go up there with any equipment. At first they say they're only going up there to like plant a flag and just like look around a bit. But then that quickly turns into like touching alien goop that's coming out of the planet just with their gloves with no like items or equipment or anything like that. So obviously Victor touches it, it starts erupting, everything goes to shit, and then they try and get back in the pod. And I actually kind of liked how they did this. I don't think the original one did this. I think they just sort of got hit with cosmic rays. In this, they try to justify a little bit how the people get the powers. So Victor Von Doom sort of like falls into a pool of it, and you think he like drowns in it. So he's obviously going to be the most powerful one because he's been exposed to most of it. Ben Grimm, when he's getting in the pad, like loads of rocks get in there with him. That's why he becomes a rock monster. Johnny Storm, he gets like set on fire or like flame goes into the pod. Never explained really why Reed Richards has like super stretchy powers or like Sue has the force field invisibility powers. They kind of like leave those like just out of it. But that's where you see the initial idea of Josh Trank. He wanted to make it much like a Cronenberg movie because this bit's basically exactly the same as The Fly. Like I don't know if you've seen that film. Jeff Goldblum, The Fly, gets trapped in the teleportation pod with him when he's trying that out, and then he slowly mutates into this horrific, grotesque, gruesome fly creature. It's a really good film. I definitely recommend checking it out. So you see the elements of it there. And especially after that, where the film gets really dark, and like I was watching it, like I can watch all manner of like gruesome and grotesque things like that. Even I was sort of like cringing in parts, like going like, oh god, this is like gone really adult and bleak. Like at this point, there's like I was thinking like kids are gonna have nightmares at this bit. It's horrific.
Yeah, I mean, when they were getting the powers, I thought it was really cool that, you know, Doom, it was like a horror, and he's like start like melting and screaming, and they just drop him, he dies, and it's when he sets him on fire, Johnny Storm, and I thought those bits are cool with Miles Teller and or Susan Storm, sorry, as well. She kind of gets hit by like a shockwave as the blue lights are going, so whether or not she's invisible because she was hit by a teleporting shockwave, I've got no idea, didn't make any sense. Reed Richards, I don't actually know. I know he kind of got stuck and tried to walk away, or sorry, crawl away. And that was kind of cool because you knew it was coming, but you wanted to see his reaction. He just fainted. But it was just like I was quite pissed off in all honesty when they know there's a dickhead on the board, but they all get drunk and they all go to fucking space. I was like, that's not how you do it. They should just let them go up into space as astronauts. Blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. But then it just like derailed after that. When he collapses, he wakes up in the center, and it's this really crap CGI in his long arms. He just crawls away and runs off and doesn't come back for a year. And obviously the thing turns into the sort of spy, espionage, killing everyone type one-man war bullshit. Johnny Storm's getting trained up for that. I could understand that. He's actually making sense when he's saying, I want to do something good, and this is it. And what pisses me off most is they have this montage of about 2 minutes where they go over all of them training for their powers, and it's kind of like, no, I want to see them get that. That's one of the things the first film did well, except Johnny Storm doing the flame on bullshit. They genuinely start to like learn it and figure out, and they don't understand what's happening. Those little things kind of work, but in this it was just like the only reason there was 2 set pictures of green screen was because the whole bloody thing was inside. It was an absolute nightmare from start to finish when they get the powers. But I was really liking the interdimensional planet stuff for the first time they visit. Going into some of the other stuff of Doom, we talk about how brutal. It was like a horror when he's on fire and stuff. It cuts to it, just a body on fire. You think, okay, this is pretty deep for a 12A. Then Doom eventually comes back, and he has this incredible moment where the twatty bored guy who's going to die and you're waiting for him to die all day, Doom kind of burns him with the Force. He's almost melting him, and the guy pops. You see in Kick-Ass a bloke pops when he's in the squash compactor thing, but that's from a long distance. This is a close-up of a guy's face popping into everything, blood everywhere, and it was
just explodes.
Yeah, it was brutal, and it was coming. You're like, okay, Doom's a badass. Then he walks round, he kills everyone. He can't blink 'cause he's made out of stupid metal, and he like kind of looks at them. His eyes turn colour, and it's almost like he's like shot him in the face with a shotgun with no bullets, and it pops on swords like, oh great, blood splat. I haven't seen blood splat in years. But then it's like there's another and another and another and another and another. Then they kill the dad, which was kind of not cool, but you see it coming. He kind of burned him to a crisp, and he's still alive for an extra minute to tell the kids to be mates and blah blah blah. And it's just, you can tell that Doom killing everyone was Trank's idea, but some of it was too far-fetched. Then you get to one of the worst fights I think I've ever seen as a so-called climax.
Oh yeah. I'll just backtrack a little bit. Just going over some of the points you brought up. Right after they get the powers, which, if I had to pick a favourite scene from the film, it would probably be that, because although that would have been a very like bleak and like horrible depiction of the Fantastic Four, if that had been like the entire movie, like a more adult grounded thing and without studio tampering, I can kind of see that playing into the tone a lot more. That was very adult. That was very sort of as realistic as you can get as like 4 people getting these horrific powers and like trying to deal with it. But then straight after that you get that title card 1 year later. You can clearly tell stuff's been cut out of it. And like when you brought up about like the things working for the military, when I think of Fantastic Four, I don't think of Ben Grimm, the Thing, forced into working for the military and being depressed as fuck and just like sort of sitting there sulking, brooding about his condition, stuff like that. It's like they say, like, we're going to find a cure for you, and they never bring up the concept of a cure again. Like, none of them ever question it. None of them are trying to work on one. They're all sort of just like training with their powers, and after the 1 year that they've already got their powers and everything's hunky-dory, you can definitely tell stuff's been cut out there and stuff like that. But with Doom, okay, I will admit that one bit where he's walking around the corridor, that was very cool. The only thing was, I was sort of going, oh, okay, I guess he's evil now. Like, we knew he was going to be evil, but it was just so quick how they did it. But you're right, for a 12A, like, I wouldn't even see some of this like killing in like an R-rated film. Like, you get the full-on blood splatter up the wall thing. Like, I haven't seen that since like an 80s action movie. So I did think it was very cool with that. I just don't think they justified it with his character beforehand. If they had have done, and he'd have looked better than he did, I think that would have been a very, very... I think that would have made it an even cooler moment. And I'm not sure who it was. I'm not sure if it was the CIA guy who was the guy who played the leader in The Incredible Hulk. He was in Holes as well with Shia LaBeouf. I'm not sure if it was his character or the dad of Johnny Storm. Josh Trank was originally going to keep one of those alive, and they were going to turn into the Mole Man, who I think is like sort of the second big villain behind Doctor Doom for the Fantastic Four, for going ahead into the sequel. But I think the studio just went like, no, just kill them. But like Doctor Doom was fine in that, but yeah, we'll move into the ending a bit now with it. Um, Completely ridiculous, and you knew that was like the studio was like, shit, this is a superhero film. We need some superhero action in there. We need to have like a big, loud, dumb fight with the heroes and the villain in space. I can sort of agree with the studio in this regard that come on, it is a superhero film. You do need a final fight with your villain. I'll agree with that. But it was the fact that they basically Venom Doom in like the last bit of this movie. He doesn't show up until like 10 minutes before the film ends, and he's just bad. And then he creates some kind of device on this planet that he's on called Planet Zero, which was a stupid fucking name for a planet. And it's like creating a black hole or something, and he wants to destroy Earth. Like, he just pulls this out of nowhere, literally like the writers did. And you get some really like bad CGI, like poorly choreographed, flat-angled, visually uninteresting fighting. It's over in about 2 minutes. It's like really tacked on to the end, and then you get a little bit of resolution. And we haven't really touched on it, but we could move into like some of the CGI if you want. I thought the CGI in this movie was god awful. There's parts in this movie where it feels like a film from like the 90s, like just when it was like coming in. In fact, I've seen 90s movies that have better CGI than this. I'm still undecided whether I like the CGI on The Thing. Like, there was parts where it looked better than others, but it's like when it's like really close up on his face, it just looked terrible. And I'm sorry, what was the decision behind not putting the Thing in pants? Like, the character looked weird. Like, loads of people were mad with Man of Steel that they got rid of the sort of like underwear on the outside of his suit with that. But with that, you kind of go, okay, fair enough, because the costume still looks like Superman. But the Thing, maybe it's just because I've always seen the character with like the blue Fantastic Four emblem shorts on, or I think even in the original ones he had like trousers on or something. But the character just looks incomplete. Like, the most of it is he's a naked guy walking around. It's like, god damn it, just give this guy some pants or something. It just looks ridiculous. But yeah, the CGI, especially with Mr. Fantastic, was probably the worst. I actually thought the Human Torch stuff looked okay, and like the invisibility and the force field stuff from Sue Storm, that looked fine. Mr. Fantastic looked really, really bad. And there's one moment in it, in the second act, you could tell it was really rushed. He sort of goes into hiding in like South America somewhere, and he changes races at one point. Like, I was watching it and thinking, like, who's this character? And then when he says like, I'll fix the till or something like that, he's trying to buy something. I can't even remember what he's buying. And it's sort of like a South American guy, and then he walks out, and I was like, is that meant to be Reed Richards? And then he does this like really bad CGI face transplant and turns back into Reed Richards. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that stretchy power gives you the ability to shapeshift and change your race. Like, no, he's just a stretchy guy. Just leave it at that. It's ridiculous. I don't know whether that was a quick rewrite and they had to do something like that. Apparently, Trank wanted that whole bit where Reed goes into hiding to be much longer, like 15 minutes. As such, he sort of goes into hiding. Next scene, Sue Storm finds him. So, you know, it's a bit all over the place, but I thought the ending was just crap, to be honest.
Yeah, and speaking of the ending, the hiding stuff was stupid. It didn't make sense. He was wearing like fake metal railings, and I was just like, Jesus Christ. But the actual ending of them, they're looking at. They try and do a Man of Steel. You can admit, Man of Steel gets this right. Man of Steel, when he goes into, you get the theme playing. He's at the journalist stuff. That's kind of a cool little bit. With this, it's embarrassing and cringy when they go, "What about a name?" And it's like,
you know it's coming.
Three people and the Thing no one cares. I was like, oh yeah, shit. Johnny Storm and the Human Torch and the Torch Wars.
And
no.
the Flamettes or Torchettes. Yeah, that's the one.
Just crap. And then it's, oh yeah, this place is fantastic. And then Miles Teller pulls like a dirt face, and he goes, guys, I think I have it. Then I can't remember if he says Fantastic Four or if it cuts to the credits, but I was there like,
to the credits.
What a tragic piece of writing. Like, at least at Age of Ultron, it's funny that he doesn't say Avengers Assemble because everyone wants him to say it. With this, it's like, no, don't do it. And it's like, yeah, no, fuck off. The credits are all I'm out. I'm going home.
I sat through the whole goddamn credits thinking there was going to be an after credit scene or mid credit scene or something like that, and it wasn't. It was just filled with terrible, terrible music by right. Let's have a look on it. Marco Beltrami and Philip Glass. I'm sorry, boys, but you did an absolutely terrible soundtrack because the entire credit song of this movie is like random improvised keyboard synthesizer discordant crap. It's horrible. It's terrible on the ears, and it just made me angry at the film. But you're right. I'm glad you brought in the Man of Steel comparison because I thought exactly the same thing. That's the only part of the movie where it tends to show like any kind of joy or like a more upbeat tone is in literally like the last 5 minutes of the movie. In Fantastic Four, they sort of the military and the government want to form a deal with them, and they basically go like, "No, we want to call the shots here," and that they just instantly agree. There's no debate or anything like that. They just go, "Okay, you can have this building, you can have all this land, whatever." You're right. They look over the lab, and then they do that stupid line at the end. Man of Steel. It's the bit where he's actually Clark Kent. We haven't seen him in the movie. Like this, where he's putting on the persona, he's working at the Daily Planet, stuff like that. I thought exactly the same thing. So, is there really anything else to spoil? I think we've mostly covered everything. To be honest, we've hit the characters, we've hit the CGI, the action. I don't think there's anything else I can talk about this movie. And I know that this particular review, for anyone listening, hasn't really been as much of a back and forth as we usually have, but I think we both just needed to like vent our frustration because there was a lot to talk about this movie, and you just sort of have to just go with it and just sort of chain it all together and just get it all out there. No Stan Lee cameo as well, which I'm kind of grateful for because I don't want to see him attached to this horrific movie. We'll just sort of go into opinions now if you want to just sort of go into your overall opinions if you haven't got the idea from our review already.
This is one of the worst comic book films. Like, believe me, this is one of the bad ones. It's worse than the original two. It's an absolute mess from the director, Fox, everything. Do not watch this film. It's a waste of time. Do I want a sequel? No. I don't want to. I think this might put the world off seeing Fantastic Four again. I'm happy that Disney have banned them from doing Fantastic Four comics. They've banned merchandise until they have the rights back.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know about that. I didn't know about that at all.
And they let them have Spider-Man because they know they want it back, but it is a mess. Just, you're better off going to the cinema. And if you've got, I mean, my tickets were free. Like, the joke's on you for that. Like, I told you, didn't I? I was like, I just dragged my sister along because it was 2 free tickets, and I was there like, this is going to be shit. Don't get your hopes up. And you know what? I wish I had my 2 hours back.
Yeah, I texted you as soon as I came out of the film, and I was like, I would like my 9.25 back and my 2 hours. And I tried so desperately to see if I had enough points on my cinema card to get a free ticket from it. Unfortunately, I didn't, so I had to pay just shy of 10 quid for this piece of shit. It's got on here on Wikipedia that a sequel is scheduled to be released on June 9th, 2017, but I think that was scheduled before the movie came out. I'm really tired of that as well, like studios confirming sequels to films that haven't even come out yet, so I don't think a sequel's going to be happening. If I just, like, before I go into my overall opinions, just think of like what the future for the Fantastic Four franchise is. I think at the minute it's pretty much dead in the water at the minute. It's a shame. I'd love to see Marvel get the rights back and sort of do it right, or even Fox and Marvel come to some kind of deal like they have done with Spider-Man, oversee the project, make it actually good, we hope, when we see Spider-Man. I think he's going to be in Civil War. It's a shame because it was a franchise that had real potential if done right. Some people say that it's unfilmable. You can't put Fantastic Four on film and make a good movie. I don't think that's the case. I think there is hope there. There is a way of doing it. I just don't think we've seen that yet. I think before we see anything regarding Fantastic Four next, whether it's by Marvel, whether it's another reboot or whatever it is, I think it's going to be a good few years before we see it, maybe 6 to 8 years. Probably like Batman was from Batman and Robin before we got Batman Begins. And it's a shame because I would like to see this, blossom into like a good franchise and stuff like that. Fortunately, we're going to have to wait a bit longer for it. But if I'm going to my overall opinions, you're paying to see an unfinished movie. It's completely slapped together by the studio and Trank. Like, I understand if Trank had a vision for it, but he should have known that studios would get involved, especially with comic book movies. They're notorious for doing that. But even that, I think the direction's poor. The cinematography is crap. It looks grey. There's no visual style to it. Even if the film was bad, I could say that the visuals look good. I can't. The CGI is bad. The action's worse than some of the early 2000s superhero films. The action's worse than the previous two Fantastic Four films, and in fact it's a worse film than that. I can't even get my head around that the reboot, to make it better, is actually worse than what came before. The cast in the original is better. There's no chemistry between the people. The villain is probably the most two-dimensional and stock villain, or even one-dimensional bad guy I've seen in anything. Really rushed, terrible script, no chemistry, awful humour. I don't think I can say a positive thing about this movie because it is so slapped together, and it's just everything it's made from. Like, the foundations of this film are broken. Like, from the studio, from the director, the writing, it's a debacle. The entire production is a complete disaster, and you can see that in the finished movie. Don't pay to go and see this movie. It doesn't deserve the money. Go and see Inside Out again. Go and see Mission Impossible Rogue Nation again if they're still playing. Hell, go and see Ant-Man again. 3 fantastic films that came out. They deserve your money. They deserve to be number one at the box office. Don't give any more money to this, because this just deserves to be sort of swept to the side, ignored, and hopefully we get something better regarding the Fantastic Four in the future.
If you want to stop him, it's going to take everything you have.
But so that was our review of the recent Fantastic Four movie. Let us know what you thought of it in the comments below. We're going to move into our next couple of segments now before we close out for today. So we're going to have another edition of Film Fights. How Film Fights works is that we take either people from the news that we've talked about earlier today, or in our main review we sort of pit them together in a sort of fun what-if fight, whether it's characters, situations, whatever. So today, being Fantastic Four, we're going to compare. We're going to have a fight between who would win in a fight between the original Fantastic Four cast and against the new one. So we'll kick off with you, George. What do you think of this fight? Who do you think is going to come out on top?
I think the original Fantastic Four cast would, because, well, they actually do teamwork. They don't just make someone go invisible.
Yeah.
And also, it's just a better cast. Like, they actually know what to do with their powers. Like these guys. Now that Chris Evans is Captain America, he's probably ripped and could rip the other people's heads off. It would be a pretty horrific fight, in all honesty. Like, I could just picture Tony Stark just like recording this on his phone, like laughing about it, like we laugh at like poor stuff. But
yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty depressing one, but I think the original Fantastic Four cast would win, just because also it's better films anyway. Like, they actually have a legit villain that causes them some damage and kills people, instead of killing, murdering everything else and going away to another dimension to have a fight.
Yeah, I think the original cast is going to win too, because they're actually superheroes and they actually do something with their powers.
And they're a team.
Yeah, I don't even think this would end in a fight, to be honest. I think the new team would just kind of stand around looking depressed about their powers and sort of like brooding about them. Like, I think the Thing would just sit this one out, or like he'd just begrudgingly try and join in the fight. We do see the Thing in this though, like swinging tanks around and stuff like that, so we know that he's got the power to do it. I just don't think he's got the enthusiasm. Mr. Fantastic in this movie does like a couple of punches and stuff like that with his powers, and that's it. Like, we see Mr. Fantastic in the original cast do a lot more interesting stuff. although that dance sequence from the original couple of movies should just like never have seen the light of day. I think Sue has more powers with the new cast though. Like I think she can fly in this new one. She can sort of glide. So we see more from her powers. So I think she'd definitely be a force to be reckoned with in this. And the Human Torch, like he's still brash, he's still cocky, but again, we never see the Human Torch do anything. Like in the original, they take down Doom. He just engulfs Doom in like a shroud of flame, just like searing hot heat. And what does the Human Torch do in this new movie? He flies next to a plane, and I can't think of anything else he does. I think that's it. And then he gets sort of like covered in gravel at the end, and he's out of the fight. This is a walk-away fight for me. The original cast just take this one. The only person who could probably match any of the old cast would be Sue Storm. But I mean, if there's no team dynamic and none of them are working together, they're just dead on arrival. So, original cast for me wins this fight. I think you're in agreement, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So, our winner for this week is the original Fantastic Four cast. Let us know what you thought of the fight. I think this is going to be a pretty much walkaway. I don't see anyone liking this new movie at all. So yeah, we'll move into our final segment of our show for today, which is Recommended Movie. How Recommended Movie works is that each week we take it in turns, nominating a film for our Thursday midweek show film club to review and talk about that vaguely ties in with what we reviewed today. So obviously today was the Fantastic Four reboot, and George, it's your turn to pick a film for this week. So what are you picking, and what are your reasons for picking it?
I had a look at a few other Group Team Marvel films, but at the minute I really couldn't be asked. I wanted something new, something I don't think we've seen. Michael B. Jordan's going to become an actor. He's going to be in Creed, so I went for a film that he's meant to be quality in, which is Fruitvale Station.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen this movie. From the Creed trailer, like obviously it's all plastered on the advertising for that, and I've heard it's meant to be really good. And I think that Michael B. Jordan is a solid actor. He looks like he's going to be fantastic in Creed. So, and this was the director's first project, I believe, before Creed.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see this film, not only to see it as a film and review it on its own, but to sort of see how his directorial style changes or advances or whatever in Creed, which comes out later this year, which I'm really looking forward to. So yeah, that's a solid pick, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Getting some new movies in with my one from the town last week, and then this week, so that should be good. So that'll be coming up Thursday on Thursday show for Film Club. Until then, rate, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you thought of Fantastic Four. Let us know what you think of our film fights, movie news, anything like that. Get involved. We want to hear your opinions and start talking movies more in the comment section below. Stick around as well. We're going to be bringing you more reviews. It's kind of weird though, because this is sort of the unofficial end to the summer movie season, so I think movies are going to slow down a little bit for August and September, but our channel's still going to be around. We're still going to be bringing you reviews each week. We're going to be bringing you our top 10, more of our top 10 lists, stuff like that, so stick with us. We're bringing you more reviews that way. You can follow us at Facebook at facebook.com/cinemasavvy, or on Twitter at twitter.com/cinema_savvy, as well as Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinema_savvy. So get involved with us on all those platforms. Let's talk movies, and let's get involved with the channel some more. So yeah, Thursday we'll have our review for Fruitvale Station, and then our main show next week. I believe we're undecided. We're either going to do a top 10 list on the worst comic book movies of all time, or we're going to do the best. I think we should probably do the best. We need something to get back on board with superhero movies and see how good they can be, and take the taste away and memory of this god-awful Fantastic Four movie. So we'll probably do our top 10 best superhero movies next week. So until then, thank you very much for listening.